The gunshot echoed through Harlem at exactly 11:47 p.m., the 27th of September, 1952, Small's Paradise nightclub, one sound that would change everything. Marcus Williams stood outside the club entrance, his hand still raised, his .45 still smoking. 20 feet away, a black Cadillac had crashed into a fire hydrant. Water erupted from the broken hydrant, flooding the street. Inside the car, Vincent Calabrese's head was thrown back against the seat, a bullet hole through his temple, his eyes still open, his finger still on the trigger of the gun that never fired. 3 seconds earlier, Marc had been watching the street. Just watching. Doing his job the way he'd done it for 8 years. Protecting Bumpy Johnson. That's all he'd ever done. That's all he knew how to do. Now he'd just killed a man, point blank, in front of 47 witnesses, and he wasn't running, wasn't hiding the gun, wasn't even moving. Just standing there, waiting for what came next, knowing exactly what came next. People were screaming, running, diving behind cars. The water from the hydrant was 3 inches deep now, spreading across Lenox Avenue. Sirens started wailing in the distance. Marc heard all of it, but didn't react. His eyes were locked on the club entrance, making sure Bumpy was safe, making sure no one else was coming, making sure the job was done. The club door opened. Bumpy Johnson stepped out, his suit perfect, his face calm. He looked at Marc, looked at the crashed car, looked at the gun in Marc's hand, looked at the water flooding the street. Then Bumpy walked over to the Cadillac, peered through the shattered window at Vinny's body, and nodded once. "You did well." 2 more men were in the car, both alive, both with their hands up, both absolutely terrified. The driver was trying to open his door, but the crash had jammed it. The man in the back seat was crying. Bumpy looked at them both. "Get out. Walk away. Never come back to Harlem." They scrambled out through the passenger window and ran, disappeared into the night like ghosts. NYPD arrived 4 minutes later. Detective Robert Walsh was the first out of the patrol car, the same Walsh who'd covered up Thomas Johnson's lynching 6 years earlier. The same Walsh who understood how Harlem worked. He saw Marc standing there with the gun, saw Bumpy standing next to the crashed car, saw Vinny's body, saw the 47 witnesses watching from doorways and windows. Walsh's face didn't change. He'd seen this movie before. "Marcus Williams," Walsh said, his voice flat. "You're under arrest for murder. Put the gun down slowly." Marc placed his .45 on the wet pavement, turned around, put his hands behind his back, felt the cuffs click around his wrists. He didn't resist, didn't speak, didn't look at Bumpy, just let Walsh walk him to the patrol car and push him into the back seat. As the car pulled away, Marc looked out the window. Bumpy was still standing there, watching. Their eyes met for half a second. Marc saw something in Bumpy's face. Not worry, not fear, just certainty. The certainty that this wasn't over. The certainty that Marc wouldn't be alone. But what the police didn't know, what nobody except Marc knew, was that he'd been planning for this exact moment for 3 weeks. Ever since he first saw the black Cadillac circling the block. Ever since he recognized the faces inside. Ever since he understood that the Genovese family was coming for Bumpy. And when they came, Marc would have to make an impossible choice. Marcus Williams was 32 years old, born and raised in Harlem, 145th Street. His father died when he was 6. His mother cleaned houses to keep food on the table. Marc had one younger brother, Anthony. They were close, shared everything, protected each other the way brothers do. In 1941, when Marc was 21, Anthony died. Overdose. Heroin that came through an Italian mob operation in East Harlem. Anthony was 18. Had his whole life ahead of him. Gone in one night because some mobster wanted to make money off Harlem's pain. Marc wanted revenge. Wanted to find the dealers, the suppliers, the men who'd killed his brother. But he was smart enough to know that revenge without power was just suicide. So he waited, worked odd jobs, took care of his mother, and watched. learned who controlled what in Harlem, learned where the real power lived. In 1944, Marc approached Bumpy Johnson, asked for a job. Any job. Bumpy looked at him for a long time. "Why do you want to work for me?" Marc told the truth. "My brother died from mob heroin. I want to protect my neighborhood. Want to make sure it doesn't happen to someone else's brother." Bumpy respected honesty, gave Marc a chance, started him as a driver, then a collector, then security. By 1946, Marc was Bumpy's primary bodyguard, the man who stood closest, the man who saw everything, the man Bumpy trusted with his life. For 8 years, Marc did that job perfectly, never missed a threat, never hesitated, never let anyone get close enough to hurt Bumpy. He carried 2 guns. 1, registered Colt. 38, legal, licensed. The gun he showed police if they asked. 1 Ghost, 45. No serial numbers, no registration, no paper trail. The gun he actually used. The gun that had just killed Vincent Calabrese. And here's what nobody understood about that night. Marc didn't just wake up on September 27th and shoot a man. He'd been watching Vinnie Calabrese for 22 days straight, had followed him from his apartment in Little Italy, to his bar in the Bronx, to his meetings with Genovese underbosses, had photographed him, had documented everything. Because Marc knew that when the moment came, when he had to pull that trigger, he'd need to prove why. At the Tombs prison, Marc sat in a holding cell and thought about those 3 seconds. Replayed them over and over. The moment that changed everything. 11:47 and 40 seconds, p.m. Marc had been watching the street. 3 cars had circled the block in the past hour. Wrong neighborhood. Too clean. Too new. Italian cars in a black neighborhood always meant trouble. Marc had noted the license plates, memorized the faces he could see through the windows. 1 car kept coming back. Black Cadillac. 3 men inside. And in the driver's seat, a face Marc recognized from 3 weeks of surveillance. Vincent Calabrese. 11:47 and 41 seconds, p.m. The Cadillac slowed down. Crawling speed. 5 miles per hour. Assassination speed. Marc's hand moved to his gun. Not the registered one. The Ghost. 45. The one he could use without leaving a trail back to Bumpy. The one he'd fired at the range twice a week for 8 years, making sure that when this moment came, he wouldn't miss. 11:47 and 42 seconds, p.m. Marc saw the window roll down, saw the barrel extend, saw the man holding it. Vincent Calabrese. Marc knew the face, knew the reputation, knew that Vinnie had killed 6 men in 2 years and never been caught. And now, that barrel was pointing at the club entrance. Pointing where Bumpy would walk out any second. Pointing at the man who'd given Marc purpose after Anthony died. 11:47 and 43 seconds. p.m. Marc had a choice. Wait and be certain. Let Vinnie fire first, then claim self-defense with witnesses who saw Vinnie shoot first. Safe, legal, smart. But Bumpy would be dead. The bullet would hit him before Marc could react. Or shoot now. Stop the threat before it materializes. Save Bumpy's life. And face murder charges. Face execution. Face everything he'd spent 8 years trying to avoid. Marc chose. Drew his. 45. Aimed at the space 3 inches behind Vinnie's left temple, exactly where his training told him a bullet would stop a threat instantly. Fired. Point blank. Through the car window. The glass shattered. Vinnie's head snapped back. The gun fell from his hand into the footwell. The driver panicked, hit the gas instead of the brake, and crashed into the fire hydrant. Water exploded. People screamed. And Marc stood there, gun raised, knowing he'd just traded his freedom for Bumpy's life. Now Marc sat in a cell, waiting for the charges, waiting for the lawyers, waiting for Bumpy to make good on 8 years of loyalty. Because Marc had done what bodyguards do. He'd protected his boss. And in doing that, he'd become a murderer in the eyes of the law. But what Marc didn't know yet was that Vinnie's gun, The one that fell into the footwell during the crash, had bounced out during the impact and rolled into a storm drain. The one piece of evidence that could prove Marc's story was gone, washed into the New York sewer system. And without that gun, without that proof, Marc's word meant nothing. The DA wanted this case, wanted it badly. His name was Gerald Thompson, ambitious, 38 years old, running for judge next year. A high-profile case against Bumpy Johnson's organization was exactly what he needed. Thompson had tried to get Bumpy before, but failed every time. But this time was different. This time, he had a killer, a weapon, witnesses, a dead body, a clean case. Thompson held a press conference on September 28th. Marcus Williams, bodyguard to notorious Harlem gangster Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson, has been charged with first-degree murder in the execution-style killing of Vincent Calabrese. This was not self-defense. This was a planned assassination carried out in cold blood on a public street. Mr. Williams saw Mr. Calabrese's vehicle circling the block. He drew his weapon. He aimed. He fired. All before Mr. Calabrese made any threatening move. This is premeditated murder, and Williams will face the death penalty. The newspapers ran with it. Bumpy Johnson's killer bodyguard. Harlem enforcer murders mob figure. Gang war erupts in Manhattan. Every headline painted Marc as a monster, a hitman, Bumpy's attack dog, who'd finally been caught. The Daily News ran Marc's mugshot on the front page with one word underneath: executioner. Marc's mother, Dorothy Williams, read the papers in her small apartment on 145th Street. She was 61 years old, had buried one son already, and now watched her other son face execution. The death penalty. Electric chair. Her baby. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Just sat on her couch holding Anthony's photograph and Marc's mugshot, two sons, one dead from drugs, one about to die for murder. She visited Marc at the Tombs on September 30th, took 2 buses to get there, waited 3 hours to see him. When they finally brought Marc out behind the glass partition, Dorothy started crying before she even picked up the phone. "Baby," she said, her hands shaking as she held the phone on the other side of the glass. "Why didn't you run? Why did you just stand there and let them arrest you?" Marc looked at his mother, saw the same eyes that had watched Anthony's casket lowered into the ground, saw the same grief starting to form again, saw the fear that she'd bury another son. "Because I did the right thing, Mama. That man was going to kill Mr. Johnson. I stopped it. And Mr. Johnson protects his own. I'm not going to die. I promise you that. But they're saying you murdered someone, saying you shot without warning, saying you're going to the electric chair. I shot to protect my boss. That's my job. That's what bodyguards do. And the law will understand that. I promise." Dorothy wanted to believe him, but she'd seen too many black men disappear into the system, swallowed by judges and juries and laws that didn't care about their stories. "Baby, you sure, Mr. Johnson can help you?" Marc smiled. First real smile since the shooting. "Mama, you remember after Anthony died? When I was lost? When I didn't know what to do with all that anger? Mr. Johnson gave me purpose, gave me family, gave me a reason to wake up every morning. You think he's going to abandon me now? After I saved his life? Trust me, this is going to be okay. But what if it's not? What if I have to bury you, too?" Marc's voice got harder. "You're not burying me. I'm walking out of this trial a free man. And when I do, I'm taking you to that restaurant you like on 125th Street. The one with the good chicken. That's a promise." Dorothy left the prison crying but hoping her son was right, hoping Bumpy Johnson was the man Marc believed he was, hoping she wouldn't have to bury another son. But what Dorothy didn't know was that Bumpy was already working, already planning, already putting pieces in place that would turn this trial from a conviction into an acquittal. Because Bumpy Johnson didn't abandon family, and Marc had just proven he was family by taking a bullet charge to save Bumpy's life. Bumpy hired the best lawyer money could buy, Theodore Lawson, 52 years old, Harvard Law, had won 37 murder cases, lost only 3. Lawson was expensive, $50,000 retainer, equivalent to $500,000 today. But Bumpy paid it in cash without hesitation. Paid it the same day Marc was arrested. Paid it before Marc even knew he had a lawyer. Lawson visited Marc on October 2nd. Walked into the prison conference room in a 3-piece suit that cost more than most people's cars. Sat down across from Marc and opened a leather briefcase filled with documents. "The case is simple," Lawson explained, his voice calm, professional. "They're calling it first-degree murder, premeditated. They're going to argue that you saw the car circling, that you planned to kill Calabrese, that you executed him without provocation. The prosecutor, Gerald Thompson, is good. He's ambitious. He wants this conviction. And he's got evidence. Witnesses who say you shot first. A dead body with your bullet in it. A weapon with your fingerprints. This is serious." "But he had a gun," Marc said. "Vinny had a gun. He was aiming at the club entrance, at Mr. Johnson." "Did anyone see the gun before you shot?" "I saw it." "Anyone else?" Marc thought about it. The window was rolled down. The barrel was extending. But the angle meant most witnesses were behind the car or to the side. They wouldn't have seen inside until after the shot. After the crash. After Vinny was already dead. "No, I don't think so." Lawson nodded. "That's our problem. Your word against a dead man. And the prosecution will argue that you shot first, the car crashed, and any gun Calabrese may have had was either fabricated or fell into the street after the fact. They'll say you planted it. They'll say you made it up. They'll say you're a trained killer who executed a man in cold blood. But there were 2 other men in the car. They saw Vinny's gun. They know what happened. Those men work for the Genovese family. They're not going to testify. They'll plead the 5th or disappear before trial. We can't count on them. So, what do we do?" Lawson leaned forward. "We argue self-defense. Not your own self-defense, but the defense of another. You saw a credible threat to your employer's life. You had seconds to react. You used the minimum force necessary to stop that threat. You're a trained professional doing your job. Protecting your employer is not only your right, but it's also your duty. Will a jury buy that? Depends on the jury. Depends on how good Thompson is. Depends on what evidence comes out. But Marc, I need you to understand something. This is going to be close. This is going to be a fight. And if we lose, you're facing the death penalty. Electric chair. Do you understand?" "I understand." "Good. Now tell me everything. Every detail. Start from the beginning." Marc told him. Told him about the 3 weeks of surveillance. Told him about recognizing Vinny. Told him about the car circling. Told him about the 3 seconds. Told him everything except one detail. The ghost gun. The illegal. 45. With no serial numbers. The weapon that Marc had been carrying for 8 years, specifically because it was specifically untraceable. Lawson listened to everything. Took notes. Asked questions. And when Marc was done, Lawson put down his pen and looked Marc in the eyes. "One more thing. The gun you used. The 45. Where did you get it?" "It's mine." "Is it registered?" Marc said nothing. Lawson nodded. "I thought so. We can't use that at trial. We can't admit that you were carrying an illegal weapon. So here's the story. After you shot Calabrese, you searched the car. Found his gun in the footwell. A 38 revolver. You took it for evidence. That's the gun you had when the police arrived. That's not what happened. I know. But it's the story that keeps you alive. The truth gets you convicted. A ghost gun gets you the death penalty. Do you understand?" Marc understood. The legal system didn't care about the truth. It cared about stories, and the best story wins, even if that story was a lie. But here's what Marc didn't tell Lawson. Here's what Marc didn't tell anyone. The ghost gun wasn't just protection. It was insurance. Marc had bought it specifically for a moment like this, had filed off the serial numbers himself, had practiced with it at an illegal range in New Jersey, where nobody asked questions. Had planned for 8 years that if he ever had to kill someone to protect Bumpy, there would be no way to trace it back, no way to prove premeditation, no way to prove anything except that Marc had a gun and used it. While Marc sat in prison, Bumpy went to war. Not with guns, not yet. With pressure, with leverage, with the kind of power that doesn't show up in newspapers. The Genovese family saw opportunity. Bumpy's best bodyguard locked up. Bumpy is distracted by legal problems. Bumpy, vulnerable. Perfect time to push into central Harlem. Take over the numbers, rackets, the clubs, the drug corners, the whole operation. They started sending messages. Started leaning on Bumpy's operators. Started making it clear that the balance of power was shifting. Started acting like Vinny's death was the beginning of Bumpy's end. Bumpy let them think that for about a week. Let them get comfortable. Let them make moves. Let them overextend. Then he made a phone call to Anthony Strollo, underboss of the Genovese family. Tony Bender, the man who actually ran things while the bosses hid. "We need to talk," Bumpy said. "Nothing to talk about, Johnson. Your man killed Vinny. That's an act of war. Vinny tried to kill me. Marc stopped him. That's called self-defense. Your man shot first. That's murder." Bumpy's voice got colder. "Let me explain something to you, Tony. Marc walks free from this trial, or every single one of your operations in East Harlem ends. I don't mean we compete. I don't mean we fight. I mean, I burn them to the ground. Every number spot, every drug corner, every warehouse, every bar, gone. You threatening me? I'm explaining reality. Marc protected me. I protect him. And if the Genovese family thinks they can use this to move on my territory, you're going to learn a very expensive lesson about what happens when you push Harlem too hard." Strollo was quiet for a moment. "You know, we got witnesses who'll testify your man shot unprovoked. Got people who saw the whole thing. Saw Williams draw first. Saw him execute Vinny in cold blood. And I've got witnesses who'll testify Vinny drew first. Plus, I've got something you don't know about. Something my people found in the storm drain 3 blocks from the shooting." "What?" "Vinny's gun. The .38 he was holding when Marc shot him. The illegal .38 with the filed-off serial numbers. The one that washed away during the crash. You want that showing up in court, Tony?" Strollo's voice changed. "You're bluffing." "Am I? You want to risk it? You want a jury to see that gun and hear that Vinny Calabrese, Genovese enforcer, was armed with an illegal weapon in Harlem, pointing it at a nightclub? You want them to hear that your family sent a killer to assassinate me? Because that gun proves everything," Marc said. "Proves Vinny was the aggressor. Proves Marc was defending me. Prove your family started this. That gun proves nothing. Could have been planted. Could have been anyone's. Could have been. But it won't matter. Because the story is better than the truth, and juries love stories. Here's what's going to happen, Tony. You're going to tell your witnesses to stay quiet. You're going to back off my territory. And when this trial is over, and Marc walks free, we're going to have a real conversation about respecting boundaries. And if we don't, then this situation goes from a legal problem to a street problem. And we both know how street problems end. Ask Vinny." Strollo hung up. But the message was received. Over the next week, 3 key witnesses suddenly changed their stories. Said they didn't see anything clearly. Said they couldn't identify the shooter. Said they weren't sure what happened. One witness, a cab driver who'd been parked across the street and had given a detailed statement to police, disappeared entirely, moved to New Jersey. Refused to return to New York. Another witness, a bartender who claimed he saw Marc draw first, suddenly remembered he'd been inside the bar during the shooting and couldn't have seen anything. Bumpy was protecting Marc the only way he knew how. By making it more dangerous to testify against him than to stay quiet. By turning the prosecution's case from solid to shaky. by creating a reasonable doubt before the trial even started. But there was one witness Bumpy couldn't touch. One witness who'd seen everything and wasn't afraid of the Genovese family or Bumpy Johnson. A 6-7-year-old grandmother named Alberta Hayes, who'd been walking her dog when the shooting happened, who'd seen the whole thing from 15 feet away, who'd given a statement to police that corroborated the prosecution's timeline, and who was scheduled to testify that Marc shot first without provocation. Bumpy sent Illinois Gordon to talk to her, not to threaten, not to intimidate, just to talk. Illinois found Alberta at her apartment on 132nd Street on October 15th, knocked on her door, introduced himself. "Mrs. Hayes, I work for Mr. Johnson. I'm not here to scare you, just want to ask you some questions about what you saw." Alberta looked at Illinois through her cracked door chain. "I already talked to the police. I'm testifying at trial. Nothing to discuss." "Ma'am, I just want to understand what you saw. That's all." Alberta hesitated, then opened the door. Illinois stepped inside. The apartment was small, clean, and filled with photographs of grandchildren. Alberta sat down in her chair. Illinois sat across from her. "Tell me what you saw that night." "I saw a man shoot another man through a car window. Saw him standing there with a gun. Saw the car crash. Saw the water. Saw everything." "Did you see what happened before the shot?" "Before?" "Yes, ma'am. Did you see the car circling? Did you see the window roll down? Did you see anything in the car?" Alberta thought about it. "I saw the car slow down. Saw the window open. Then I heard the shot." "What about inside the car? Did you see the man who got shot? Did you see his hands?" "It was dark. I saw shapes, saw movement, but I couldn't see details." Illinois leaned forward. "Mrs. Hayes, the man who got shot, Vincent Calabrese, was a killer. Professional assassin for the Italian mob. He'd killed 6 men in 2 years. He was in Harlem that night to kill Mr. Johnson. The man you saw shoot him, Marcus Williams, was protecting his boss. Protecting his employer. Doing his job." "That's not what the police said." "Police said Williams shot first, said it was murder." "Police say a lot of things, but you were there. You saw it. Think about what you saw. Really think. The car is slowing down. The window opening. The angle. Could there have been a gun inside that car that you didn't see?" "I don't know." "That's reasonable doubt, Mrs. Hayes. That's what keeps an innocent man from dying in the electric chair." Alberta was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke. "I don't want to lie. I don't want to say, I saw something I didn't see. I'm not asking you to lie. I'm asking you to be honest. To admit you don't know everything. That you couldn't see everything. It was dark and fast and confusing. That's not lying. That's the truth." Alberta nodded slowly. "I'll think about it." Illinois stood up. "Thank you, Mrs. Hayes. That's all I ask." He left. Alberta sat in her chair for an hour, thinking about what she'd seen, what she knew, what she could say in court, thinking about a man facing the death penalty, thinking about truth and doubt and what justice really meant. The trial began on the 2nd of December, 1952. New York State Supreme Court, Judge Harold Watkins presiding. 12 jurors, 8 white, 3 black, 1 Puerto Rican. Prosecutor Gerald Thompson sat at his table with 3 assistants, a wall of evidence boxes behind him. Defense attorney Theodore Lawson sat alone with Marc, confident, calm, ready. Marc wore a suit Bumpy had bought for him, dark blue, crisp white shirt, simple tie. He looked respectable, professional, not like a killer. That was the point. Lawson had coached him for weeks. Sit straight, make eye contact, don't react, don't show emotion. Let the jury see a working man, not a gangster. The courtroom was packed. Bumpy sat in the back row with Illinois Gordon and Willie Lee. Dorothy Williams sat 3 rows from the front, clutching a Bible. Reporters filled half the gallery, notebooks ready. This was the trial everyone in Harlem had been waiting for. Thompson's opening statement was brutal. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is about a man who thought he was above the law. Marcus Williams worked for Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson, a known criminal, a gangster who controls illegal gambling, narcotics, and violence in Harlem. Williams was not a bodyguard. He was an enforcer, a killer. And on the night of the 27th of September 1952, Williams executed Vincent Calabrese in cold blood on a public street. Thompson pointed at Marc. This man saw Mr. Calabrese's car circling the block. This man drew his weapon. This man aimed. This man fired, all before Mr. Calabrese made any threatening move. This was not self-defense. This was murder, premeditated, planned, executed, and I'm going to prove it to you beyond any reasonable doubt. Thompson laid out his timeline. 11:30 p.m. Calabrese's car was first seen circling. 11:35 p.m. Second pass. 11:40 p.m. Third pass. 11:47 p.m. Williams draws a weapon, fires through the car window, and kills Calabrese instantly. No warning, no provocation, no justification, just murder. The evidence is overwhelming, Thompson continued. Witnesses will testify that Williams shot first. The coroner will confirm that Calabrese died from a single gunshot wound to the head. Ballistics will prove that Williams' gun fired the fatal bullet. And the defense will try to claim self-defense. But I ask you, how can you defend yourself against a man who never threatened you? Thompson sat down. The jury looked at Marc, some with suspicion, some with curiosity, one older white woman with clear disgust. Lawson's opening was different, quieter, more personal. He stood up slowly, buttoned his jacket, and walked to the jury box. Ladies and gentlemen, my client is a bodyguard. For 8 years, Marcus Williams has had one job: keep Bumpy Johnson alive. He doesn't start fights. He doesn't look for trouble. He prevents it. On September 27th, Marcus Williams saw a threat. A car is circling the block, a window rolling down, a gun barrel extending, and he had 3 seconds to make a decision. Wait and watch his employer die, or act and save a life. Lawson paused. Let that sink in. 3 seconds. That's how long Mr. Williams had to process what he was seeing, assess the threat, and respond. 3 seconds between life and death. 3 seconds between doing his job and watching his boss get murdered. 3 seconds to make the choice that brought him here today. The prosecution will tell you this was murder, but I'm going to show you what this really was. A trained professional doing exactly what he was trained to do. Protecting life, stopping a threat, acting on instinct and experience to prevent an assassination. Lawson walked back to his table. Vincent Calabrese was not an innocent man driving through Harlem. He was a professional killer, an enforcer for organized crime, a man with 6 murders to his name. And on that night, he was in Harlem with one purpose: to kill Bumpy Johnson. Marcus Williams stopped him, and the law protects that action. The law says you can defend another person from deadly force. The law says bodyguards have the right to assess threats and respond. The law says my client did nothing wrong. Lawson sat down. The jury looked different now, less certain, more open. Lawson had planted doubt in the first 5 minutes. Thompson called his first witness. Officer Raymond Burke was first responder to the scene. Burke testified about what he found: the crashed car, the body, the gun in Marc's hand, the witnesses, the chaos. Standard police testimony builds the foundation of the case. Then Thompson called the coroner. Dr. Michael Stevens testified about the autopsy. Single gunshot wound to the left temple. The bullet entered at a slight downward angle, consistent with a shooter standing outside the vehicle firing at someone seated inside. Death was instantaneous. Calabrese never had a chance to react. Then came the witnesses. Thompson called Alberta Hayes. She walked to the stand slowly, her hand shaking as she placed it on the Bible. She looked at Marc once, then away. "Mrs. Hayes," Thompson said gently, "tell the jury what you saw on the night of September 27th. I was walking my dog on Lenox Avenue around 11:45 p.m. I saw a car slow down near Small's Paradise. Saw the window open. Then I heard a gunshot. Saw a man standing outside the car with a gun raised. Saw the car crash into the hydrant. Saw water everywhere. And the man with the gun, can you identify him? Alberta looked at Marc. That's him. The defendant. Thank you. Now, Mrs. Hayes, did you see what happened before the gunshot? Before? Yes. Did you see anything that would suggest the man in the car was threatening anyone? Alberta hesitated. I saw the window open. But did you see a weapon? Did you see any threatening gestures? It was dark. I couldn't see inside the car clearly. So, you saw no weapon. Saw no threat. I just saw the defendant shoot a man through a car window. Is that correct? Alberta looked down. That's what I saw, yes. Lawson's cross-examination was careful. Mrs. Hayes, you said it was dark. How dark? Very dark. Streetlights weren't great on that block. And you were how far away? Maybe 15 feet. And the car window was tinted, correct? I believe so, yes. So, from 15 feet away, in the dark, through a tinted window, you couldn't see what was happening inside the car, correct? I could see shapes, movement. But you couldn't see if someone was holding a weapon. Couldn't see if someone was aiming at the club entrance. Couldn't see details, correct? Alberta paused. That's correct. I couldn't see details. Lawson nodded. No further questions. Thompson called 2 more witnesses. Both said similar things. Saw the shooting. Didn't see what happened inside the car. Couldn't say if Calabrese was armed. Thompson's case was strong on what happened, weak on why. Then, Thompson made his mistake. He called the ballistics expert, Detective Howard Chen, NYPD Forensics. Chen testified about the bullet, the gun, and the trajectory. All standard. All technical. All boring to the jury. Then Lawson cross-examined. Detective Chen, you examined the defendant's weapon. A. .45 caliber handgun. Correct? Correct. Was that weapon registered? Chen hesitated. No. The serial numbers were filed off. So the defendant was carrying an illegal weapon, correct? Objection, Lawson said calmly. The defendant is not on trial for weapons charges. Sustained, Judge Watkins said. Thompson tried again. Detective Chen, did you find any other weapons at the scene? No. So, there's no evidence that Mr. Calabrese was armed. Lawson stood. Actually, Your Honor, I'd like to introduce Defense Exhibit A. A court officer brought forward a plastic evidence bag. Inside was a .38 revolver, scratched and muddy. Lawson held it up. This weapon was recovered from a storm drain 3 blocks from the shooting. Forensics confirm it was in the car during the craw. Watermarks match the timing. And most importantly, this weapon has no serial numbers, just like the defendant's weapon, because both men were professionals carrying untraceable guns. Thompson's face went white. Where did you get that? Discovery, Your Honor. We submitted this evidence 3 weeks ago. The prosecution chose not to address it. The courtroom erupted. Judge Watkins banged his gavel. Order! Lawson walked to the jury. This gun proves Vincent Calabrese was armed, proves he was dangerous, proves Marcus Williams' story. The question isn't whether my client shot first. The question is whether he had reason to believe his employer was in danger. And this gun proves he did. Thompson tried to recover. Called a Genovese family associate who claimed Vinny wasn't violent. Called character witnesses. But the damage was done. The gun changed everything. On December 9th, Lawson made a risky call. He put Marc on the stand. Against standard legal advice,